The battle between gig workers and the companies they work for can be summed up in a few words: technology, precarity, rights.
Calling gig workers independent contractors is an employer's trick to strip workers of basic rights.
They're trying to make this seem as if this is a new problem. It's the way of technology, that there's nothing we can do about it. But we know there is something we can do about it.
It's precarity posing as many things, and in this case, independent self-employment.
In February of this year, Foodora couriers in Toronto made history by successfully challenging their employment model, a model that's used by most app companies here and many other countries.
Workers have come together in this country and to stand up for all of the things that we consider core Canadian values.
In winning their case, these couriers set a precedent for other gig workers seeking greater protections. In the process, they lost their jobs. Foodora closed its doors in Canada and declared insolvency.
That we're going to keep fighting to keep bettering the working conditions of hardworking people here.
Despite Foodora's closure, couriers won their union vote in a landslide, the first gig workers in the country to do so. With a new app company looking to buy Foodora's assets, couriers are set to continue fighting for their jobs and for more change. Unless there are significant updates to our labor laws, other workers will have to win the same rights as Foodora couriers, one case at a time. In California, the birthplace of the gig economy, that change is already underway.
Producers united will never be defeated.
I'm Sarah Morshahedzadeh. This is Hustled, a podcast where we explore what it means when your boss is an app. I've been following a scrappy group of Toronto food couriers as they take on a multinational company, a modern-day David and Goliath story. To some, Foodora Canada's closure is its final chapter. To couriers, it's the beginning of an even bigger story.
I was making about $200 a day.
Wow.
Every day. So give or take, I was doing anywhere between $1,000 and $1,200 a week.
James Hicks is an Uber driver in Los Angeles, California. He's been driving for over 4 years.
When it first launched, it was $3.95, maybe a mile, and it was a $5 base fee. So to go a single mile was at least $8.
James is a writer and actor who moved to LA from New York City. His wife, who's originally from South Africa, got tired of the cold winters, so they headed west.
My main dream is acting. I'm screenwriting right now, and that's what I'm doing, just like every other Uber driver in Los Angeles.
James had to find a way to make money while they got settled in their new home, and Uber was a good fit.
It's a really good gig for artsy people, because we can start and stop whenever we want to. And when we make enough money during the day to actually take off and pursue our passions, that's when this job is perfect.
When he started, James says the pay was decent.
Yeah, that was, not with taxes considered, but I was still making quite a bit where I could actually help with the rent or even pay the whole rent and then, make the car payments, basically just do life stuff.
Not long after he took the job, Uber started slashing its pay rates for drivers.
It's about a 80-something% cut. I did the math one time, and it's not worth it. I mean, brake pads, new oil, gas every single day. Right now, honestly, I'm driving sort of on fumes. So
in a good week, James estimates he now makes about $600 before expenses. That's half of what he was able to earn when he started.
I used to be able to fill up, every single day so I can maximize my driving, but I can't afford to put in the, $30 it costs to fill up my tank every single day. 30 times 5 is $150 for gas. Mm-hmm. And that's not including driving on a Saturday or Sunday if you have to.
James was frustrated about changes to his livelihood, changes he had no say in.
Absolutely. This is the technological revolution, what we're going through right now, where you can, make a living through your phone. That was never possible until, our Lord and Savior, Steve Jobs, came down and invented the iPhone, But now we have it, and people have figured out a way to become, billionaires through it, which is whatever. But, you don't have to exploit people on your way to obscene riches and wealth. You don't have to. You choose to. At the risk of sounding like Captain America, I don't like bullies. I don't like to be bullied. I like things to be fair because life is hard enough as it is.
But James knew there wasn't much he could do on his own.
Who wants to go to court against $1 billion corporation? Just pay me my goddamn money and let's not play like games. That's all we really want. Fair pay, the ability to be protected, negotiate for the things that people have negotiated for in this country over 100 years ago. I have found this group on Facebook and I, signed up because I like the thought of uniting.
The group was called Rideshare Drivers United.
I went to the meeting and I've been here ever since.
Their goal was not just to win stronger protections for Uber drivers. It was to change state laws to make it harder for all companies to classify their workers as independent contractors.
Rideshare drivers fighting back! Rideshare drivers fighting back!
As part of their campaign, James went to the California legislature with a group of gig workers to make the case.
I think we took about 50, maybe 60 people. We had to have a whole bus. We assisted in meeting with the lawmakers and saying, listen, this is why we need to have you, signing on to this bill and helping it become a law here in California.
And it worked.
The so-called gig economy bill, also known as AB 5, has just passed in the California Assembly. This was largely a formality.
California Assembly Bill 5, or AB 5, became law last September. Unlike here in Ontario, it puts the burden of proof on companies to show their workers are true independent contractors. Otherwise, workers are presumed to be employees. That means they're entitled to basic labor protections, including the right to minimum wage, overtime, sick days, and joining a union.
It was fantastic. The organizing, all the hard work, it really amounted to something. So I'm happy that it passed. I'm happy that it's a law now.
Linda Valdivia is a member of the Mobile Workers Alliance in Los Angeles. She also worked to get the changes made to California law. She's a petite grandmother who started driving for Uber in 2015.
It was about 10 o'clock in my house, 10 p.m., and I started yelling, screaming of happiness because he signed the law. So we had, everything we did, it was paid off really good.
But businesses are pushing back, and app companies are leading the charge.
What I think is they are so used to their system, their way of putting their business on the table. And let me tell you, nobody is above the law. There is one thing we have in our hearts right now is just to keep working hard. Never stop. Keep on doing it until we reach the top of the mountain, until we are walking on the things that we have worked so hard for.
Platforms like Uber, Lyft, Postmates, and DoorDash launched a ballot initiative seeking an exemption from AB 5, a campaign that has $90 million behind it.
We continue to believe that drivers are properly classified as independent, and because we'll continue to be responsive to what the vast majority of drivers tell us they want most, flexibility.
This is Uber's legal officer, Tony West, speaking the day after AB 5 passed last fall.
Now today, drivers have control over when, where, and how they work. They can choose to work for any of our competitors at the same time, and many do. Now, this would all change dramatically if drivers became employees. We will continue to defend the innovation that makes that kind of choice, that kind of flexibility and independence a reality for over 200,000 drivers in California.
Uber said it had tried to negotiate stronger protections for its drivers, including guaranteed minimum earnings, benefits, and sick leave, as an alternative to passing AB 5.
And we believe California is missing a real opportunity to lead the nation by improving the quality, the security, and the dignity of independent work. Our ballot measure will not ask voters to simply exempt us from AB 5. Instead, we'll ask voters to support the pro-driver policies we've advocated for.
Recently, Uber filed a lawsuit against the state of California to try and block the legislation.
But we're also pursuing several legal and political options as well.
The lawsuit calls AB 5 an irrational and unconstitutional law designed to stifle gig workers.
We continue to hold out hope that California lawmakers will seize the historic opportunity before them to dramatically improve the quality and security of independent work, to strengthen the 21st century labor movement, and to protect California's innovation economy.
Lawyers for the state of California fired back. They said companies like Uber and Lyft are, quote, peddling lies to the public about their business model. A model, lawyers said, that is based on mistreating workers.
I think that we've seen some incredibly important developments in California, and I think soon maybe New York, Washington, where the states have made massive inroads to starting to deal with this issue of subcontracting in the gig economy. And so I think that we have a lot to learn there.
Dina Ladd is head of the Toronto-based Workers' Action Centre.
To me, the important part of the new legislation that's been passed in California is that basically it says very, very simply that if you are doing work that is part of the business of a company, you are covered. And to me, that just is fundamental, that a company, an employer has to take responsibility for people who do its business, who work in its company. That's exactly what Foodora has shown us.
And how different would this fight be if we did have legislation like they do in California?
Oh, I don't think we'd even be having this issue, right? The California legislation is incredible. It starts to really just fundamentally break down this bullshit response by companies to say that, you know, somehow you're not my employee, right?
Dina says this kind of legislation would be a game changer in Canada.
So I would say that 20 years ago, people would not have, it was difficult to have this conversation. I would say that nowadays we're ahead of that conversation in terms of people having some type of app-based delivery that they've had some connection to. I think that there is a lot of work that we have to continue to do in terms of, again, sort of breaking it down for people. But a lot of parents, they see what their kids are going through, right? And when I say kids, I mean like 30 and under, right? They're seeing what their kids are going through in terms of trying to find work. And their kids are, you know, trying to get jobs through these gig-based apps where it's all contract or it's no job, no hour guarantee. They see that because they're seeing young people struggle, right, to make an income and to be able to look after themselves.
Legislation like AB 5 wouldn't just change things for those working through an app. It would impact cleaners, nail salon workers, truck drivers, home care workers, any sector where people are often classified as independent contractors and excluded from basic protections.
That's where we need to see fundamental leadership by government, supported by worker advocates, to pass legislation like California. We are very determined to do everything we can to pass that legislation in this country as well. I think we need it. I think obviously, you know, we need to build people's understanding of how critical that legislation is. But I think that, yeah, we still have a bit of a ways to go before we can bring it to Canada. But I think absolutely it's essential.
Foodora courier Ivan Ostos has spent months bringing together a diverse group of workers scattered across a city of 6 million people. He sat through hours of labor board hearings.
Change is coming in the gig economy around the world. And we are proud to be a part of that change here in Toronto.
And wielded the mic at countless rallies.
we've already accomplished so much. We've already made a community and an organized structure that is willing to fight for these basic necessities that people have.
It's been a long road.
For me, I need to take some time to reflect and learn and take care of myself.
He's helped win the country's first ruling on the gig economy, only to lose his job.
And you gotta acknowledge what happened, and you gotta, get all the feelings out and be proud of what you do, because we did a lot, and we deserve to be proud of that.
But his fight isn't over.
For us, I think it's just a matter of time before we're back at it, and we're back to doing things again. What those things are, we don't know yet, but we're gonna decide what's the best choice, because we've built so much, and that's not gonna go to waste. So the way I see things, there's gonna be another fight, and we don't give up this easily.
Like Dina, Ivan believes there's a bigger battle ahead, one that, in light of the pandemic, is more urgent than ever.
I would say that all the issues that have always existed are out in the open now. They've never been more glaringly obvious. How we're simply not respected, how people don't observe social distancing in grocery stores and the clerks suffer. Everyone who's working right now is feeling that, and it's really tragic. But at the same time, when those issues become obvious, it is a point when you can make movement happen. So I think even though we're all hurting right now, and I don't know what we're gonna do in the immediate future, it does mean that we're on the right path.
Without legal reform, gig workers will have to fight workplace by workplace to join a union. The Foodora precedent will help win those cases, but the process still takes months, if not years. In Ontario, it boils down to a system where access to basic rights are based on legal categories established decades ago: employee, dependent contractor, independent contractor. That has Toronto labor law professor David Dorey asking what the value of these categories are today.
There's definitely an argument that these are 20th century terms that have less relevance or no relevance today.
This is essentially what two experts advised the Ontario government 3 years ago. The experts were appointed by the province to investigate how worker protections need to be updated.
Because work changes, work evolves.
The advisors recommended that basic employment rights should be extended to more people by expanding the definition of an employee to include workers like Foodora couriers. Workers who may be flexible, but still needed protection.
It's the purpose of the legislation to provide protections for vulnerable workers. If it is, then the distinction shouldn't be employment, not employment, some legal distinction that we made up, 100 years ago. It should be, is this person economically vulnerable and dependent? And if so, they should be covered by the legislation.
The advisor's recommendation was never implemented.
Well, the government's done nothing about the so-called gig economy, right? Despite it being kind of one of the defining issues of, I think, our times.
Ryan White, the lawyer who represented Foodora couriers and the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, says that downloads a huge responsibility onto workers.
It's really been up to unions and individual workers to kind of self-enforce the law, which is incredibly problematic. And so I think, there being some sort of proactive action would be very, very helpful. We haven't seen that from the government.
But the couriers' win is still significant.
It's easy to say, all of this whole campaign was geared towards getting this decision. And in some ways it is, but it's, that just centers the legal work, which I feel like is really the least important part of this. I think it's far more important to talk about just what an incredible job the postal workers did here and the foodsters did, right? They've run a fantastic campaign. I feel like doing this case, took 2 years. It made me feel 2 or 3 years younger than I actually am, right? It just was very exciting to be around people with that kind of infectious energy. So I think it's a really powerful message to other workers that this is what you can do in your workplace.
And doors are already opening.
And the Canadian Union of Postal Workers have paved the way for Uber drivers in Toronto to have...
Drivers for Uber's luxury ride-sharing service have just started hearings at the Provincial Labour Board. Like Foodora couriers, they're challenging Uber's employment model and fighting to join a union. received $3.96 in tips. My producer, Laura Reguer, and I are on our final shift.
They didn't tip on a $230 order?
No. We've had two major companies, one being our biggest university, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt that they don't understand how the app works, but it's not cool to order hundreds of dollars of food and not tip on it. I took 3 shifts with Foodora, giving me just a glimpse of what life is like for gig workers relying on apps like this one to earn a living. During my brief stint, I delivered everything from a faculty lunch to a single tuna sub. Each interaction was a little window into this world of work. I think what we've learned is that Wednesday is the day that people have office lunches. I knew it would be a hustle, and I've done 6 kilometers today, so that's $6. So 2 hours, $44. Definitely our best day yet. But I hadn't anticipated how much the job would make me think about why and how we use these services. That person who had ordered was really sweet. In times of necessity, and he was like an elderly gentleman who I think probably has like mobility issues, so I could definitely see how this would be a godsend, when we want comfort. I mean, I couldn't really tell what her vibe was. I guess just someone who felt like dessert for lunch. Or to bring us together over a meal.
What kind of food is that?
Salads and stuff. 17 salads. It's been remarkably busy today. Whatever our motivation, we're all living in a world where we're pressed for time. Technology has made it cheaper, easier, and faster than ever to get stuff delivered to the doorstep. The past year has me thinking about how many couriers and consumers are caught in the same system. A system centered around speed, efficiency, and cost over everything else. Looking at Foodora as a microcosm of all this, I wonder how sustainable that system is. And it brings me back to something courier Chris Williams said.
The truth is that when it comes to like a healthy community, a healthy city, healthy families, a healthy economy is really, really important. And we could have an economy that's growing, but that's very different from an economy that's healthy and in which not just their profit margin can grow, but in which the people can grow too.
When I first started meeting Foodora couriers over a year ago, I heard a lot about wages and safety. I also heard a lot about something more intangible. In a digitally interconnected world, over and over again, I heard about the desire for real connection.
So as I continuously attended these meetings, I went from knowing 8 couriers to now, dozens upon dozens. And
for Foodora driver Houston Gonzalez, that's the lasting victory that has nothing to do with court battles and legal reforms.
We formed a bond, in this common fight to join the union. It's one of these things where I wouldn't have known these people, and now suddenly it's I love all these guys and girls. I'm a pretty shy person. Sometimes I do enjoy being by myself, but at the same time, you do feel lonely. So getting to meet others and sharing experiences and the struggles we're going through and what we're fighting for. The simple thing is getting to vent, getting to
commiserate sometimes.
Yes, and understanding I'm not alone.
It's something Houston's colleague Ivan feels too.
Best thing has easily been the community. I just fucking love meeting all these people and getting to know them.
Ivan says that community is especially important because of how people see gig workers, or more accurately, don't see them.
It's funny, when I started this job, there was a lot more customer interaction because I think there was more intrigue and, people were like, wow, you're on a bike, that's so cool. And now it's whatever. You're just kind of a cog in this machine of the delivery app. You're the end sequence in the Foodora app.
Right.
You just show up and give them their thing and say goodbye, and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't really like that much. I wish it wasn't like that because, it's weird because it's really such a small thing.
Some people have discounted the Foodora campaign and the workers behind it. the age-old refrain of just get a real job.
But so what I say is, what is a real job? A real job, does that mean a job that commands more respect? Well, I'm actually just trying to make this job more like that.
Why do you think this matters in the bigger picture?
I think it matters in a lot of ways. Like in the big scheme of things, I see that in this century, there's going to be a lot of drastic changes, way more drastic than the advent of app food delivery. This kind of worker organizing is just a small step in what I see as like a bigger event happening over the next few decades and years, because the way things are right now, there's no way we can keep doing the things that we're doing now the same way we've been doing them for a few years now. So basically, I'm saying that this has the potential to grow and become something I think really good for changing society as a whole.
Hustled was jointly produced by the Toronto Star and Antica Productions. It was written and produced by myself and Antica producer Laura Reguer. Kathleen Goldhar is our story editor and executive producer at Antica. Mitch Stewart is our audio producer. Mixing and sound design by Phil Wilson. And Stuart Cox is president of Antica Productions. Janet Hurley is senior editor at the Toronto Star, and Irene Gentle is editor-in-chief. Hustled is made possible thanks to the ongoing support of the Atkinson Foundation. If you liked this podcast, please subscribe to the Toronto Star's daily podcast, This Matters. Hosts Adrian Chung, Saba Etizaz, and Raju Mudhar discuss stories of Canadian cultural, economic, and political importance. You can find it at thestar.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.